Ananya Rao thought she had found the perfect solution to her collapsing American dream, and Officer Daniel Murphy believed he had finally found peace after heartbreak. But inside a luxury Boston apartment, their marriage was never built on love. While Daniel trusted the woman he called his wife, Ananya was quietly calculating deadlines, insurance payouts, and immigration timelines. What looked like a fast romance between an ambitious Indian student and a respected cop was, in reality, a carefully constructed plan that would end in a silent bathtub, a staged accident, and a murder that shocked the entire city. Ananya Rao arrived in Boston with a single suitcase and a confident smile that convinced everyone she was ready for a bright future. She told her family in Hyderabad that she had earned admission into a respected business program and that America was the first step toward a successful career. Her social media reflected that dream. Photos showed her studying in quiet libraries, walking past historic brick buildings, and holding takeaway coffee under autumn trees. Everything looked stable and hopeful. In reality, her situation was fragile. Tuition payments were delayed, and her part-time campus job was not enough to cover rent. Her student visa required full-time enrollment, yet her grades were slipping. 2 failed subjects placed her academic standing at risk. If she lost her enrollment, she would lose her legal status. The pressure was constant and silent. She avoided phone calls from home when money was mentioned. She stopped meeting classmates who asked about exams. Ananya began researching ways international students could remain in the United States. She read immigration forums late into the night. Marriage-based residency appeared again and again in her searches. The idea slowly shifted from curiosity to strategy. When she met Officer Daniel Murphy at a charity fundraiser in downtown Boston, she saw more than a kind man in uniform. She saw stability. Daniel was recently divorced, financially secure, and known for his responsible nature. He owned a modern apartment and had a steady career with the police department. To him, Ananya appeared gentle, ambitious, and sincere. To her, Daniel represented safety and permanence. Their early meetings were carefully planned. She spoke about family values, hard work, and loyalty. Daniel felt protective and admired her determination. Within weeks, their relationship grew serious. Friends described it as fast but passionate. No one suspected that behind Ananya's warm smile was a growing calculation. The wedding took place in a small Boston courthouse with only a few close friends present. Photographs captured bright smiles, a simple white dress, and Daniel's proud expression as he signed the marriage certificate. To him, it felt like a fresh start after a painful divorce. He believed he was building a stable future with someone who appreciated his loyalty and discipline. Ananya played the role perfectly. She appeared grateful, affectionate, and excited to begin their life together. Soon after the ceremony, Ananya began suggesting changes. She talked about living in a better neighborhood closer to the city center. She mentioned how a luxury apartment would reflect Daniel's success as a police officer. Within 2 months, they moved into a high-rise building with secure entry, private elevators, and a spacious master bathroom featuring a deep marble bathtub. The rent was significantly higher, but Daniel saw it as an investment in comfort and happiness. At Ananya's encouragement, Daniel updated his financial plans. He increased his life insurance coverage, explaining to colleagues that marriage required responsibility. The policy listed Ananya as the sole beneficiary. He also added her to his bank accounts, giving her access to savings he had built over years of careful service. Behind closed doors, Ananya's behavior was more strategic than affectionate. She monitored Daniel's work schedule and noted when he would be on night shifts. She began sending small amounts of money overseas under the excuse of helping family. Bank statements later showed these transfers were frequent and consistent. Daniel remained unaware of any warning signs. He worked long hours and trusted his new wife completely. To him, their marriage symbolized stability and hope. To Ananya, it was security carefully constructed for a larger purpose. By the 6th month of their marriage, small doubts began forming in Daniel's mind. He first noticed unusual credit card charges while reviewing monthly statements. There were purchases from high-end boutiques he had never visited and hotel reservations during nights he had been on duty. When he asked casually about the expenses, Ananya offered simple explanations about gifts and online orders. Her answers were calm, but the patterns continued. Daniel's training as a police officer made it difficult for him to ignore inconsistencies. He quietly hired a private investigator, keeping the decision confidential. The investigation revealed troubling information. Ananya had previously been engaged to another American citizen in Chicago. The relationship had ended abruptly after immigration paperwork stalled. There were also records of communication with a man named Rahul Varma, someone she claimed was only an old friend from university. Surveillance photographs showed Ananya meeting Rahul at a cafe on afternoons when Daniel was working extended shifts. Phone records indicated the use of encrypted messaging applications installed shortly after the wedding. Financial reviews exposed regular transfers from their joint account to an overseas recipient linked to Rahul's family. Daniel felt betrayed but remained cautious. He contacted a lawyer to discuss annulment and began gathering documentation quietly. He did not confront Ananya directly. Instead, he observed a routine more carefully. At the same time, Ananya seemed aware that something had changed. Her internet searches grew darker and more calculated. Investigators would later discover phrases related to sedatives, accidental drownings, and forensic timelines. She spent longer hours alone in the apartment, often in the master bathroom where the large soaking tub stood against the wall. The distance between them widened. What once felt like a promising partnership slowly transformed into silent suspicion. The night it happened was unusually quiet. Daniel had returned home after a long shift, visibly tired but calm. Security footage later showed him entering the building alone at 9:47 p.m. The hallway camera captured no signs of struggle, no raised voices, no urgency. Everything appeared normal. Sometime after 11 p.m., a neighbor reported hearing a heavy thud, like something falling against tile. There were no screams, no calls for help, just silence afterward. Inside the apartment, the lights remained on. The next morning, Daniel failed to report for duty. When fellow officers tried calling him, there was no response. Concerned, supervisors authorized a welfare check. Officers arrived at the luxury high-rise and used building management access to enter the unit. They found Daniel in the master bathroom, submerged in a marble bathtub filled nearly to the edge. The water had gone cold. A minor cut marked the back of his head. At first glance, it appeared he'd slipped while stepping out or leaning back too far. The scene was neat. There were no signs of forced entry or visible struggle. Ananya was in the living room when officers entered. She appeared pale but composed. Her clothes were dry. She claimed Daniel had decided to relax in the tub while she went to bed early. According to her, she had discovered him unresponsive in the morning. However, small details raised concern. A wine glass on the counter contained residue later identified as a dissolved sedative. Daniel had no prescription for such medication. The bathroom floor was dry, inconsistent with a violent fall. Most telling, toxicology reports confirmed he had enough sedative in his system to impair movement significantly. What looked like a tragic accident began to unravel into something far more deliberate. As investigators examined Daniel's phone, laptop, and financial records, a clearer picture began to form. Deleted messages were recovered through forensic software, revealing months of encrypted communication between Ananya and Rahul. The conversations were structured, practical, and focused on timing. They discussed Daniel's work schedule, the building's security system, and the estimated payout from the life insurance policy. There was no emotion in the messages, only planning. Security footage from the luxury apartment complex provided another critical piece of evidence. Cameras showed Rahul entering through a side service entrance shortly before 11 p.m. on the night of Daniel's death. He wore a cap and carried a small backpack. Just after midnight, he exited the building alone. His visit lasted less than 90 minutes. When police tracked his movements, they discovered he had booked a last-minute international flight scheduled for 2 days later. Officers arrested him at the airport. Inside his backpack, they found cash, a prepaid phone, and printed copies of financial documents connected to Daniel's insurance policy. Forensic analysis confirmed Ananya's fingerprints on the sedative container found in the kitchen trash. Digital timestamps showed she had searched for water-related accidental death statistics only days before the incident. Bank records also indicated plans to transfer large sums overseas immediately after the insurance claim would have been processed. During the trial, prosecutors presented a timeline built on data, surveillance, and financial trails. The evidence showed coordination rather than coincidence. The jury concluded that Daniel had been drugged, incapacitated, and deliberately drowned. Both Ananya and Rahul were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy. The luxury apartment was eventually sold, but the case left a permanent mark on the community, proving that calculated betrayal can hide behind even the most convincing. The trial attracted intense media attention across Boston. A decorated police officer had died inside his own home, and the circumstances were both shocking and unsettling. Reporters filled the courtroom each day, documenting every detail presented by prosecutors. Daniel's fellow officers attended in uniform, sitting silently behind his family. The atmosphere remained heavy throughout the proceedings. Prosecutors focused on building a clear and structured timeline. They showed how Ananya's visa status was close to expiring before the marriage. They presented academic records proving she was no longer in good standing at her university. Financial documents revealed increasing pressure and growing debt in the months leading up to the wedding. Each piece supported the theory that the marriage had been a calculated solution rather than a romantic decision. Digital forensic experts explained how encrypted messages were recovered. They described how deleted chats between Ananya and Rahul outlined specific dates and contingency plans. The prosecution emphasized that Rahul's entry into the building had been prearranged. Security logs, phone location data, and building access records aligned precisely with the timeline of Daniel's death. The defense attempted to argue that Daniel's death was a tragic accident complicated by circumstantial evidence. However, medical experts testified that the level of sedative in his bloodstream would have made it nearly impossible for him to remain conscious in a bathtub without assistance. The pattern of bruising suggested controlled movement rather than a sudden fall. As the evidence accumulated, the jury appeared increasingly convinced. After days of deliberation, they returned with a unanimous verdict, guilty on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy. The courtroom remained silent as the decision was read. For Daniel's family, justice brought closure, but not comfort. For the city, the case became a stark reminder of that danger. After the verdict, attention shifted from the courtroom to the deeper story behind the crime. Investigators released a detailed report explaining how the scheme had evolved over time. It revealed that Ananya's financial difficulties had intensified months before she met Daniel. Tuition notices, unpaid credit cards, and warning emails from her university showed a pattern of instability. Her student status had been closer to termination than anyone realized. Authorities also uncovered evidence that Ananya had studied previous immigration fraud cases. Her laptop contained bookmarked articles about marriage-based residency approvals and timelines for permanent status. She had calculated how long she needed to remain legally married before securing independent residency rights. The plan was not impulsive. It had been shaped by research and patience. Rahul's background added another layer. Records showed he had struggled financially in India and had attempted to obtain a U.S. visa twice before being denied. After Ananya's marriage, his communication with her increased sharply. Financial transfers from Daniel's joint account matched deposits into accounts linked to Rahul's relatives. The partnership was built on shared ambition and desperation. Experts later described the crime as a combination of financial motive and fear of exposure. Once Daniel began gathering information about annulment, the risk to their plan grew. Investigators concluded that the murder was accelerated by the possibility that Daniel might withdraw financial access or report immigration fraud. The luxury apartment was eventually renovated and resold, but the case continued to be studied in law enforcement training sessions. Officers examined how digital evidence, financial tracking, and building surveillance had worked together to uncover the truth. For many, the story remained unsettling not because of violence alone, but because of its calculated nature. Years after the conviction, the case continued to echo beyond the courtroom. Law enforcement agencies reviewed their internal support systems, especially for officers experiencing major life changes, such as divorce or rapid remarriage. Daniel's colleagues reflected on how quickly his relationship had progressed and how few questions had been asked. The tragedy encouraged departments to provide stronger financial counseling and emotional support programs for officers under personal stress. Immigration officials also studied the case carefully. It exposed weaknesses in how marriage-based residency applications could appear legitimate on the surface. Investigators later confirmed that Ananya had prepared documents in advance, anticipating each stage of the green card process. Her application had been organized, detailed, and convincing. The crime revealed how paperwork alone could not always expose hidden intent. Daniel's family established a scholarship in his name for students pursuing criminal justice. The scholarship emphasized integrity and community service, values Daniel had represented throughout his career. Each year, recipients learned about his dedication and the circumstances that led to his death. His story became both a warning and a lesson. Ananya and Rahul began serving lengthy life sentences in separate correctional facilities. Appeals were filed but ultimately denied after higher courts reviewed the digital and forensic evidence. Their calculated plan, designed to secure wealth and freedom, resulted instead in permanent confinement. The luxury apartment where Daniel lost his life was renovated completely. The marble bathtub was removed, replaced by a modern walk-in shower. New residents moved in, unaware of the history beneath the polished floors. The case left a lasting message. Deception built on ambition can appear polished and convincing, but when trust is exploited for gain, the consequences can be permanent.